Hello, good afternoon to all. I hope you all are doing well. This is the first important theme which we discussed yesterday that we are going to discuss from today onwards. And in this topic, what are the points which we have to know for your exam? Prelims, generally, this topic is important. And once you understand, then you would also understand the other development. So you have to understand what I said yesterday, when, where, why, etc. So first important year was Vasco da Gama, who came from Portugal to Calicut. As you know, Calicut is in Kerala via Cape of Good Hope, which is in South Africa. What did he discover? If the question is, what did Vasco da Gama discover? So the point you have to understand, he did not discover sea route. He did not discover land route. Both were already known in ancient time to the Europeans and Arabs in India. They were coming regularly. But he discovered a complete sea route or an all sea route. That means that he did not touch land when he came from Portugal to Cape of South Africa, then to Madagascar, and then to Calicut. The earlier routes were either sea route with land in between, that is Arabian Sea, Red Sea, then there was a land, and then there was a Mediterranean Sea. In between Mediterranean and Red Sea, today you have Suez Canal, but Suez Canal was built in 1869, and we are talking 1490s. So the traditional route, that is sea route, land route, was blocked by the Ottomans in medieval time. So the Europeans started searching a new route. And in this search, before him, in 1492, Christopher Columbus, who actually wanted to search new route for India and China, accidentally discovered America. So this point in exam becomes very crucial, because both the options, if it is given sea route and complete sea route, so you have to pick this one. So this was about the discovery by Vasco da Gama. What is that discovery? A complete sea route to India from Europe, or an all sea route to India, right? Now, the local rulers of Calicut, the dynasty was called Zamorin. So Zamorin rulers welcomed Vasco da Gama, and he took spices in 3 ships, earned 60 times profit, which is huge by any standard, past or present. So that shows the demand of spices in European market, especially black pepper. Now, what is we call in North India Kali Mirch or Gol Mirch? This was used generally to preserve meat. And you have to keep all the time Zama and Makan, what I told yesterday, that to preserve meat, in those days, there was no refrigerator and Kelvinators. So spices were used in preserving the meat. In European country, they eat meat more because it is cold climate. And the temperature here is not ideal for spices. Just coming in 2 minutes. So we are talking about black pepper. one of these spices which was in great demand because Europeans needed to preserve meat as it is a cold climate. There is a term for black pepper in ancient time, and the term was Yavan Priye, something which was very dear to Yavanas, foreigners. So keep your note always in action mode. Write it down, whatever uh, we are writing here, so that your answer notebook should be very rich in terms of content, and each one which we are discussing is relevant for your exam. Now, once this route was open, the other Europeans started coming. So first important development after this was annexation of Goa. Goa was under a princely kingdom called Adil Shahi rulers of Bijapur. Bijapur is today in Karnataka, but in medieval time there was a kingdom called Bahmani Empire, Bahmani Kingdom. In this Bahmani Kingdom, there were many subset kingdoms, 5 of them. One was Adil Shahi, one was Qutub Shahi, one was Imad Shahi, one was Barid Shahi. These were some of the regional kingdoms in Karnataka, Andhra, and Maharashtra. So they had control over Goa, but it was annexed by Portuguese in 1510. And the Portuguese who annexed, you have to write his name, Alfonso de Albuquerque. There is a name of mangoes in the Konkan belt. Some of you might have heard, that is Alfonso, right? So maybe that name derived from this man. He might have tasted and liked, so he could have given this name. Bunna apne log aam hi keh rahe the, usne isko naam de diya. Anyway, so Alfonso de Albuquerque. Now this name sounds little Arabic. Why so? The reason being is Spanish and Portuguese both were influenced by Arabic, especially Spanish, and almost it is said 70% words of Spanish today have been taken from Arabic. The reason was that Arabs had ruled almost 600 years over Spain in medieval time. So, you know, one finding of your general studies would lead to many more findings. So that's the beauty of studying history, that as I told yesterday, that if you keep, 25% separate part or 20% separate part in your notebook, you can add some interesting and important relevant materials. Then you write in 1530s. When I say 30s, what does it mean? 1530 to 39. When I say 40s, 40 to 49. These are the terms which we will be using frequently in history. So acquaint yourself with the terminology. For instance, when I say first half of a century, so first half of 19th century, what does it mean? 1800 to 1850. When we say second half of 19th century, what does it mean? 1851 to 1900. So in the books, you would get this kind of terminologies. So in 1530s, the Portuguese captured Daman and Diu. You all know today it is our union territory. So in 1510, they captured Goa. This is very historic. 1530s, because there are a group of islands, and they captured what I said, Daman and Diu. And Goa became and remained headquarter of Portuguese till 1961. Now imagine, Goa was captured by Portuguese in 1510 and it was liberated from them in 1961. That means when we got independence in 1947, Goa was still not part of India and it was under Portuguese control. So how after independence certain territories like Kashmir, like Goa, like Pondicherry, like Hyderabad were merged finally in India, that is also a topic we have to discuss, but only after independence history. This is a brief history of the Portuguese in India. And I told already yesterday the other Europeans who came in the order, if you could recall, after Portuguese came in 1604, they were Dutch from the Netherlands and they first came at Surat. Then in 1608, they were English, that is from England, and they also came at Surat. Then 1618, they were Danes, that is people of Denmark, they also came at Surat. Then 1667, they were French and they also came at Surat. Now, each of these primarily came for trade, and that's what we discussed, that they came for 3 Gs. What are those 3 Gs? You're using 4 Gs, right? So first G was gold, second was God, third was glory. So why did they come? If the question is, then majority of them came for trade. With the trade, you would get wealth. And you know, wealth is measured in different period with different indicators. But gold is one common denominator throughout ancient, medieval till date. Even today, if you possess gold, 22 carat or 24 carat, and you are traveling anywhere in the world, you can exchange with the local currency. So it is called liquid currency, which can be exchanged at any point, anywhere in the world. So at present, two most important liquid thing in the world, which is not liquid in that sense, which is in chemical sense, one is US dollar and one is gold. Suppose you carry Indian currency outside India, nobody would take your currency. They always want the local currency. So what at airport, you must have seen, many of you, that there is a counter for exchanging the foreign currency wherever you are going. And there is a set rule how much dollar you can take out from India when you are going. These are all part of your general studies paper, because RBI keep changing, Government of India keep announcing that this much of gold, this much of cash you can possess while traveling. You must have heard recently in Kerala, a young woman was arrested for carrying, I think, 30 kg gold. And she was coming from perhaps Dubai, and she, worked in consulate office, and those officials are given a special visa. This is called diplomat's visa. So their belongings are not checked the way the other belongings are checked. Perhaps she started misusing. So the limit of currency, gold, is always set by the government of India or any union government. So if you read newspaper and read history, you would get the connection that why gold was so important in history. God here means they wanted to spread Christianity, particularly the Portuguese. And Christian religion, Islam religion, and Buddhism religion. These are the three religions which you can find in history as very active religion in terms of preaching and converting the people. Whereas religion like Jainism, Hinduism, Parsi, that is Zoroastrianism, Judaism, in these religions you don't find that they are active. So you can call they are passive. They're not very much interested in converting and preaching. If somebody came, it's okay. If somebody does not, they would not go and tell like this is the product and you must purchase, unlike the three religions which I mentioned, Christianity, Islam, and Buddhism. This I'm telling as a student of history. In history, everything is seen differently. If you're a believer of a particular faith, then you may be shocked by the term and the language and the tone and the tenor of the writer and the teachers. So you have to be little patient and tolerant to listen the sentences carefully and don't feel offended by some of the sentences which we uses. So what I'm saying that these are active. In certain religion like Judaism and Parsi religion, not only they're not active and they don't even accept conversion. Suppose somebody wanted to be a Parsi and he is right now a Muslim or a Hindu, then the door is closed. You have to be born in a Parsi. So Parsi plus Parsi is equal to Parsi. I hope you're getting. One reason why the strength of the Parsi is so low in the world and in India, like in India, I heard only 73,000 Parsis in India as per 2011 census record. So it is the lowest minority in India in terms of number. Largest minority is Muslim in terms of number, both percentage as well as actual number. And government of India was so much worried about Parsi that if they are 70,000 now in 2011, then maybe after 40 years, they may completely, disappear from this world. So they started a program which is called Geoparsi. That means how to preserve the population. It is like how to preserve elephant, how to preserve tiger. So we started how to preserve Parsi. Is it not very interesting that the government has started a program to preserve Parsi? Why so? Because they don't allow conversion. Whereas in other religions like Islam, Hinduism, Buddhism, conversions are admitted. Some are very active, some are passive. Three religions which were more active in history, I have already given you which three religions: Islam, Christianity, and Buddhism. If you see globally, just check at the map today, religious wise, you would find maximum country in the world. At top would be the Christian countries, the second would be Islamic countries, the third would be Buddhist countries. This is in terms of the number of countries. Why so? Because in the last 2000 years, they traveled across the world, including our own country. And that's the point which I'm talking, that some of the Christian missionaries from European countries, there are different sects within Christianity and Islam and Buddhism and other religion. So in India, for instance, Roman Catholics, for instance, Christian Church of Syria, for instance, Calvinist, for instance, Protestants, they all came. But Roman Catholics, of course, are the largest in number anywhere in the world, including in India, other than Germany, Switzerland, and certain parts of England. This all you have to know. And in India, they came first, as I told, in Calicut, then they captured Goa. And even today, if you see the Christianity in Kerala is in a very large number, both in terms of actual number and percentage. And to the best of my knowledge, 25% plus people in Kerala are Christians. That itself is a huge number in terms of population. Do you know the states in India where Christians are in majority? Majority means 50% plus 1. Okay, if there are suppose 1 lakh people, so that means 50,001 people must be in that area to call as majority. So these are 3 states in India: Nagaland, Mizoram, and Meghalaya. These are the 3 states where Christians are in majority, right? The only state where Muslims are in majority is Jammu and Kashmir, but it is no more a state, it is a union territory. And the one union territory where Muslims are in majority is Lakshadweep, right? So this all you should know in terms of religion. Like Sikhism is in majority in Punjab, that you must have seen it. In 5 states of India at present, Hindus are in minorities. This is Jammu and Kashmir, Punjab, and these 3 states where Christians are in majority. So this also you have to learn through history. So what I said, the second reason, God, Christianity. Third reason, glorification of their country. You heard this, Jhanda Uncha Rahe Hamara. So they were always, interested in spreading their ideology of nationalism, pride of their country. But the first reason, that is the goal, that is the trade, that is to earn the wealth. was the most important reason why Vasco da Gama and why all the Europeans took their life at great risk, came to India and America and Latin America in those days. Clear? Now, when they started coming, it was very natural that there was rivalries and struggle and battles among them. You know, business rivalry, even today, all over the world takes place. If you read newspaper carefully, when Jio came, what happened to Aircel? Gone. What happened to Vodafone and some other company? They were forced to merge, and Airtel slashed the rate. This is rivalry. And history tells that no business in the world is fair. There is a department in the government of India which check the fairness of the business so that undue advantage is not taken by a particular company, and that is Competition Commission. You should read it. What is its job? What is its jurisdiction? This you have to learn in paper 2 as well as in paper 3. Paper 2 because it is part of law, paper 3 because it is part of economics. So this what I'm saying, despite the presence of, Competition Commission, there are a lot of conspiracy within the corporate and the government and the nexus. So here also, when they came, there was rivalries among the European nations, not only in Europe, but in India also. So one topic which we have to learn briefly, that initially they struggled and fought against whom? So the first who came among them we have already discussed were Portuguese. But before Portuguese, Arabs were already very strongly present in this western part of India. As Arabs, this is Saudi Arabia and all the Gulf countries are here. So they had good trading ties since ancient time, and they were taking Indian products. The Indian traders would come from different parts of India, and they would come to either Gujarat or Maharashtra or Karnataka or Kerala or even Sindh, which was part of India. And Karachi has a port today, so that means the Sindh part was also used. So they would come, and their trade was carried by mainly Arabs. Indian traders, suppose they are getting spices, they were coming with clothes, with gems and jewelries, with iron and steel, right, with some animals, with some perfumes. These are the items which Indian exported, and ivory works, hati ke daant ke bane saman, right? And you have to write all these items very quickly when they ask what were the item of export from India to European countries and Arab countries in those days which we are talking. So the Indians would bring their product to the coast. The Arabs would take this product and would sell in the market of Arabs, Africa and Europe. And this happened since 7th or even early 6th century AD till 16th century AD. Can you imagine the period from 6th to 16th, 1000 years? Arabian Sea, our west coast of India, be it Bombay or be it Karnataka, are situated in the Arabian Sea, was actually dominated by Arabs, not by Indians. The reason was that in the water, you need large ships. In the water, you should know the route where you are traveling. There was no Google map in those days. So how the people would go from India to Arab to Africa, it was not known, and Arabs were very good in geography, and they were the first, if you know, who had discovered monsoon. The very word is an Arabic word, Mausam or Mausim, and that is how they knew this. They had large ships. Then in the 6th, 7th, 8th century, their political stability, their economic development further were the reason why they dominated our Indian trade. in the west coast. But history tells one very interesting thing कि सबके दिन फिरते हैं, सबके दिन लौटते हैं. तो अरब का एक दिन था, जमाना था, हुकूमत थी. अब उनको टक्कर देने आ गए कौन? पोर्चुगीज. नाउ एक और कहावत है कि दुश्मन जिस वेपन से लड़ता है, आपके पास या तो वही वेपन हो या उससे स्ट्रांग वेपन हो, तभी जीत सकते हैं आप अगर उसके पास तलवार है, आपके पास कलम है, तो ये किताबों में तो जीत जाओगे, रियल लाइफ में ऐसा होता है. तो औरंगजेब नहीं जीतता और दारा शिकोह जीतता. दारा शिकोह बहुत बड़ा स्कॉलर था, हिस्टोरियन था, लेकिन वो हार गया 3 बैटल में. और हुकूमत किसकी हुई? औरंगजेब की हुई. ये हिस्ट्री है. सो पोर्चुगीज started building better ships than Arabs. And naturally in those days, the major battles were fought in water, not in land. अगर आप एक और तरीके से हिस्ट्री देखो, in ancient world, most battles were fought on land. Like Alexander attacked mostly through land. Ashoka's Kalinga war was land. Samudragupta's conquest, all land. Medieval period was dominated by those who were strong in water. 71% earth part is water, you all know that. And obviously, any country which had a strong ship, commercial ship or naval ship. Commercial ship means for goods. Naval ship means for war. And एक और ship होता है आजकल जो honeymoon ship होता है, जो टूरिस्ट शिप होता है, जो आजकल आप देखते रहते होगे, जिसमें अपना ऋतिक रोशन और अमीषा पटेल खो गए थे. मूवी आपको मालूम होगा सन 2000 में आई थी. ओके, तो माय पॉइंट इज कि मेडिवल पीरियड में इफ यू आर स्ट्रांग इन वाटर you would dominate. That's the reason why Arabs and Portuguese would struggle. That's the reason why India is nowhere in the picture. Third, in modern time, if you're strong in air force, then you can win the war and you would dominate. And this started from 1917 during the course of World War I, when US entered with air force and the entire game of war shifted in favor of England and France because they had US as a partner, and the other side like Germans and her allies were defeated. And that continued even in Second World War, 39 to 45. And the US and her allies were very strong because they were very strong in air strike. अगर आप एक गौर से हिस्ट्री को एक नजर में देखो, India missed in ancient time because we were not strong in land. India missed in medieval time, we were not strong in water. India missed in modern time, we were not strong in modern air. But there is a term called postmodern, that is generally post Second World War. If you're strong in a space, then you can still dominate. This is where India is catching and catching fast. That's the reason why Jawaharlal Nehru and Indira Gandhi government started program related to space. And today India has a good position in the world, whether third or fourth and fifth in different categories of space. So history, you should not only read as a king, as a dynasty, as a date, which your uncles and aunties read in the past. History has changed completely. You have to read history through technology, through the warfares, through the ideologies, and how the countries, a particular, for instance, today, why China is dominating so much that US is threatened. If US is threatened by one country, it is China. Why almost all India's neighbor are in trouble, whether it is Vietnam or India herself or entire Southeast, Southeast Asia. It is because of the emergence of China as a giant country, technologically, economically, and obviously militarily. आप कभी भी इंडिया और चाइना का कंपेयर करो मिलिट्री के किसी भी एरिया में, नंबर्स में, नंबर ऑफ एयरक्राफ्ट्स में, नंबर ऑफ नेवल शिप्स में, नंबर ऑफ एटम बॉम्ब्स में, तो आपको जो गैप मिलेगा, एक डिप्रेशन आ जाएगा. ओ माय गॉड, इतना बड़ा गैप है. तो मैं जब भी देखता हूँ उसके बाद सीधे इंडिया का बांग्लादेश से कंपेयर करने लगता हूँ, तो थोड़ा हौसला बढ़ जाता है. ओके, नो, इंडिया इज वेरी स्ट्रांग even with Pakistan. ये अपना एक psychological booster है. Don't take it seriously. What my point? That the Portuguese in the beginning had to clash with whom? Arabs. So in 16th century, it's almost 100 years, Portuguese and Arabs fought for what? Fought for supremacy in Arabian Sea and coast of West India. You know, this kind of questions in prelims are very common. If you're listening carefully, writing whatever I'm writing, and you are also understanding, internalizing, फिर ये आपके जहन से नहीं निकलने वाला. All you have to do is revise, and how not to forget also I will tell you hopefully today or in my next class. Now, in this entire struggle, one of the two is out, and which was out? The Arabs were out. What is the reason? Pure technological and military. And this is how you have to understand that when you are in battlefield, which weapon, which strategy, which type of leaders you have, and backed by your economic development. So what kind of economic development they had and what they had. Now, 17th century saw a very unique tripartite struggle among three Europeans or three European powers. Tripartite because there are three. Period is now 17th century. For what? Again, for supremacy in Arabian Sea and coast of Western India. This is the 2 points you have to understand. Supremacy in Arabian Sea and all the coast areas from Sindh to Gujarat to Maharashtra to Karnataka to Kerala. This all who would dominate so that they could dominate the trade, they would become rich. That was the reason why they were clashing. Which three? Portuguese versus Dutch. I use the word versus, it is a sports terminology, England versus France in football or India versus Pakistan in cricket. In exam, don't write like this. In classroom, we will use some of the terms for your easy understanding. Then, Portuguese versus English. And then, English versus Dutch. So the clash was between Portuguese and Dutch, Portuguese and English, English and Dutch. Which century? 17th century. Since they are three, so historians gave a term tripartite struggle. Where they fought mostly? They mostly fought in this water. For what reason? To capture this entire coast and the route so that they would establish their monopoly. They would get Indian products and would sell in the European, Arabs, African market. This is in history tripartite struggle. What was the end result of this tripartite struggle and how they would fight? Just in brief. In the water, suppose a ship of Dutch is coming from Europe to India. So already some ship of Portuguese would be in mid-water and they would have their pirates. You must have heard this word pirates. In Hindi we call Samudri Daku. You heard this current pirates of Siberia. So they would attack the ship. They would loot all the wealth. They would kill all the men who were inside and also sink the entire ship. That was very common. There are a lot of movies made on this story of that period. Now, among them, the pirates of Portuguese were very notorious in those days. यानी उस वक्त के ये समझ लो जैसे इंडिया में चंबल के डकैत सुना होगा कि आदमी जाते हुए डरता था बीहड़ में क्योंकि that is a ravine. Ravine is due to soil erosion, the entire terrain becomes like, mountain, and there is a huge range of, a ravine, and it gives a good hideout place for the dockad. So it was very difficult for police to locate, and after attacking a village and killing somebody, they would hide. If police attacked, they would attack the police. That is exactly in the water the Portuguese were doing, like Chambal ka Dakat. So in history, there is a term called pirates. So this was commonly going on. But finally, the Dutch left from India and sold her factories to English. What is factory? I told you the term meaning is not same as we use today. In those days, factory was a place where goods were stored, kept. When we use today the word factory, it means something manufactured. In those days, nothing was manufactured. It was generally on the bank of a river or a sea, and there would be fortified, and Indian rulers would allow these Europeans to live there, to trade there. That area, that compound was called factory. So the factories which they sold, who sold? The Dutch sold to English, that you have to know. One is Chinsura, which is in Bengal. One was Patna, which is in Bihar. One was Surat, which is in Gujarat. So this type of question in prelims they would ask, that which of the following factories were sold by Dutch and to whom? Dutch sold it to whom? To English. Where did Dutch go then? Dutch went to Indonesia. You all know Indonesia very well today. And Indonesia was also very good producer of spices. That's the reason why the Dutch went there, and over a period of time, they captured Indonesia as the English captured India. So when Second World War ended, 1945, many countries in the world were liberated, including our own country, 1947. So Indonesia was also liberated by Dutch in 1948. So these are colonies of some of the European countries. So one out of the three is out from the competition. Now two of them are left. Which two? I hope you can easily find. These two are Portuguese and English. Now both were very strong in water. English were now much superior in terms of ships. It was lighter and faster. The ship of Portuguese was heavier, obviously slow, and speed does matter in life as well as in battles. So what happened? They in 1662 agreed to end their rivalries, right? And this ended with a matrimonial relationship. In medieval time, शादियां सिर्फ पर्सनल रिलेशन के लिए नहीं होती थी, पॉलिटिकल शादियां होती थी, जिससे एक किंगडम और दूसरे किंगडम के रिश्ते अच्छे हो जाते थे. अकबर ने बहुत सारे राजपूतों से शादियां की. Most of this marriage was political oriented. So did Jahangir. Okay, not Shah Jahan. And I don't know about Aurangzeb much, whether he married or not. But out Shah Jahan, I know that he had only one wife. So the most loyal husband in Mughal history was Shah Jahan. Okay. Now, matrimonial alliance kiske kiske beech hua? That you have to know. In 1662, Prince Charles of England married Princess Catherine Braganza of Portugal. So two royal families married, and Prince Charles got from the Portuguese a small island, Bombay, as a gift. इंडियन राइटर्स ने इसको लिख दिया डाउरी, क्योंकि अपने लोग डाउरी लेते थे तो उसको लगा कि ये भी डाउरी ही होगी. यूरोपियंस में, अरब्स में, बाकी कंट्री में डाउरी का कॉन्सेप्ट नहीं होता, तो आप डाउरी मत लिखना, आप इसको एज ए गिफ्ट कह सकते हो. नाउ बॉम्बे केम अंडर हुम? अंडर द कंट्रोल ऑफ प्रिंस चार्ल्स of England. Now what they did, that this Bombay was given to English East India Company by the royal family. Don't forget, this was a private company and this is the ruling class royal family. So they gave Bombay on lease. I hope you know, पट्टे पे दे दिया कि आप इस पे business करना. And this Bombay at that time was hardly had a population of 10,000, mostly of fishermen, machware what is called. And later on, sorry, it became a great headquarter of East India Company in the Western India. And today, it is one of the top 20 cities in the world. It is the largest city in the entire Indian subcontinent, which I hope you all know that. So this is how the Portuguese and English relationship is now much better. Portuguese would have Goa, Daman and Diu. English would have Bombay in the western coast. They would not intervene in the area of their business. This is about arrival of Europeans and their struggle among themselves with whatever conclusion. I hope that topic is very clear to you. Second important topic, India in 18th century. As I told, a glimpse. 18th century means 1701 to 1800. Now, after the death of Aurangzeb, and he died in 1707, what happened? Mughal Empire started collapsing. You can say downfall. It did not end, let me clarify, because finally Mughals ended in 1857. But the fall started, this is like fall from here, that is in 1707. But Mughals of Akbar to Aurangzeb, 1556 to 1707, death of Aurangzeb, beginning of Akbar. During this period, they had established such a powerful kingdom, such a stabilized polity, such a developed economy, that even after the death of Aurangzeb, the empire lasted, you can see, for almost 150 years. Despite the fact that none of the sons and grandsons and great-grandsons of Aurangzeb were as capable as Akbar, Jahangir, Shah Jahan and Aurangzeb, right? But yet Mughal Empire lasted because of the structure, because of the foundation was so strong. It is said in Hindi, Urdu, हाथी मर के भी 1.25 लाख का होता है, right? So अगर empire मजबूत है, बुनियाद मजबूत है, तो कमजोर होते होते भी वक्त लगता है. So Mughal Empire started declining after the death of Aurangzeb in 1701. And that led to emergence of regional kingdoms. Regional kingdoms were of two types. A, those which were part of Mughals, like Bengal, like Awadh, like Hyderabad, which was called in those days Deccan. ये यहां तक बोर्ड रेंज में है क्या धर्मेंद्र? ओके, देन rivals of Mughals like Jats, Sikhs, Marathas. So when they saw in Agra and Delhi, the Mughal rulers were not capable, they all started becoming independent. Two types of kingdoms, one which were part of Mughals, Bengal, Awadh, Deccan. Their governors were called Nawab, so and so. Subedar was the name of their post. Nawab was a title, Nawab and so, right? So they all became more powerful than the king at Delhi and Agra. And the rivals of Mughals who could not emerge when Akbar was king, Jahangir was king, Shah Jahan was king, Aurangzeb was king. But the moment Aurangzeb died, they all got chance to declare their own kingdoms. And that's how you would see in Haryana part, Bharatpur and surrounding Jats became independent. In Punjab, Amritsar and Lahore, Sikh regime emerged. And in Maratha, the Peshwas and some other Sindhyas, Holkar, Gaikwad, they all became independent rulers in 18th century. So you understood two types of states which emerged independent. So what now you have to know, those kingdoms like Bengal was the first which became independent from Mughals. Founder Murshid Quli Khan. Capital Murshidabad. But when I say Bengal, which part of India comes in your mind? That is what you have to be careful. Today, if I say Bengal, then you would think about West Bengal of Mamta Didi, Calcutta as capital. But in those days, this Bengal was not only this modern day West Bengal, but also modern day Bangladesh, also modern day Bihar, Jharkhand, and Odisha. So you can imagine the size of this Bengal, and obviously the economic importance, because economically it was the richest state in India. And what was the size of Bengal? I gave you the name of current Indian state, but if I say like this Bengal was bigger than England, France, Germany, Austria, and Hungary put together. ये सारे कंट्री को मिला लो, इन सबसे बड़ा अकेला इंडिया का सिर्फ एक बंगाल था. Now this looks very interesting, and for us, for many of you, surprising. Even today, you know, England is smaller than Odisha. You know, France is smaller than Rajasthan. You know, Germany is smaller than Maharashtra. अच्छा, यही सब बोल के हम लोग खुश हो लेते हैं. दिल के खुश रखने को गालिब ये ख्याल अच्छा है. लेकिन जब हम देखते हैं जीडीपी ऑफ फ्रांस, जीडीपी ऑफ जर्मनी, जीडीपी ऑफ इंग्लैंड, तो उनकी रिचनेस कितनी है, आपको मैं एक और शॉक कर देता हूं. क्योंकि हिस्ट्री में आपको बड़े बड़े शॉक मिलते हैं, क्योंकि हिस्ट्री इज मिरर, आईना दिखा देती है. क्लियर है ना कि हम कहाँ ठहरते हैं. हैव यू हर्ड नेटफ्लिक्स? Of course, many of you are using. You're at Amazon, you are using. You're at Google, you're using. Facebook, you're using. And Microsoft, you're using. These are 5 American companies. इनका जो नेट वर्थ है, वेल्थ है, वो इंडिया के टोटल जीडीपी से ज्यादा है. सिर्फ 5 अमेरिकन कंपनी. जब आप ये सब पढ़ोगे तो रात को नींद नहीं आएगी, फिर कुछ लगेगा कुछ करें साहब, अपना भी जीडीपी बढ़ाएं और देश का भी बढ़ाएं कि साहब ये 5 सिर्फ कंपनी, तो सोचो फिर यूएस का क्या होगा पूरा. So that's the picture of today. But that was not the picture when we are talking in history. Bengal alone was richer than all these countries. और इंडिया कितना रिच था उसका एक छोटा सा एग्जांपल देता हूं मैं आपको कि वन ऑफ द मुगल ऑफिसर, टॉप ऑफिसर कॉल्ड मनसबदार, आप इसको समझ लो आज का एक लेफ्टिनेंट जनरल एंड सेक्रेटरी लेवल officer, because in those days military and army and civil service was joined, but not he was a minister rank and not even king. So one of the Mughal officer Mansabdar, his annual income was greater than Queen of England, and the queen I'm talking was Elizabeth of 16th century. उसकी जो पूरी इनकम थी साल भर की, उससे ज्यादा एक मुगल ऑफिसर की इनकम होती थी. और वो ऐसा अकेला नहीं होता था, ऐसा कम से कम 1000 ऑफिसर था अकबर के दरबार में जिसकी इनकम इंग्लैंड के क्वीन से ज्यादा. तो सोचो अकबर की कितनी होगी और फिर सोचो इंडिया की कितनी होगी. दैट इज व्हाट द स्टोरी ऑफ मॉडर्न इंडिया, अर्ली फेज, not the later phase. So Bengal was the first, and I hope you understood when I say Bengal, what is now the picture of Bengal is coming. So I would suggest you that in your reading room or at your reading table, few things you must have. क्या क्या चीजें आपके टेबल पे, रीडिंग टेबल पे होना चाहिए? सिलेबस पक्का होना चाहिए, वो चाहे सॉफ्ट कॉपी में हो या हार्ड कॉपी में. सॉफ्ट में हो तो हार्ड में तो बेहतर है, so that you can tick it off. Last 5-year papers, 10 years का हो it's better, but minimum 5 years of objective and subjective. Keep looking and keep comparing the two. जो सिलेबस में लिखा है और क्वेश्चन में लिखा है, दोनों में कितना रिलेशनशिप है, आपको लगेगा कि बाहर है, बाहर नहीं है, उसी के अंदर का एक्सप्लेनेशन है. थर्ड, keep always atlas with you. There are two types of atlas which you have to refer. One is historical atlas, which I'm talking. Suppose you want to see Bengal in 1757, because Bengal in 2020 would be different from Bengal in 1757. So you have to see one recently published atlas, maybe of 2020 or February, March, etc., whether Oxford or TTK, these are the good brand, and one historical. And it is easily available in every market, in which you have to see, say, Mahajanpad. So Mahajanpad were in 6th to 5th century BC, when Buddha and Mahavira were rulers, were living. So at that time, when you say Magad, when you say Avanti, when you say, Koshal, Kashi, where it was located in modern day India, when we say Mauryan kingdom, Gupta Empire, Shakas, Harshvardhan, Iltutmish, Alauddin Khalji, Muhammad bin Tughlaq, Sher Shah Suri, Akbar Jahangir, each one turned the pages, and in hardly 40 to 45 pages, this entire history of ancient to modern, you can have, a glance. And every day, if you just see 20 minutes atlas from here till next 6 months, then the map of the world would be always in your mind. And you can see when you are sipping tea, when you are having some snacks, at that time also you can see that. So that you can utilize your worst time, your best time, when you are very fresh, बहुत अच्छा mood है पढ़ने का, then you should read the toughest part of the syllabus. और जब आपको पढ़ने का बिल्कुल मन ना करे, नींद आ रही हो, खाना खाने के बाद नॉर्मली होता है ऐसा, क्यों होता है? इसकी एक बायोलॉजी है पढ़ना. सो उस वक्त आप मैप देख लो, उस वक्त आप पिक्चर देख लो, उसको भी डेटा देख लो. सो वो डेटा देखते देखते हो सकता है नींद आ जाए, लेकिन वो ख्वाब में भी वो इंडिया का जीडीपी ही आएगा, वो ग्राफ आएगा. सो दैट वुड हेल्प यू टू प्रिपेयर इन लेस टाइम and with more productive results. Okay, so I hope you understood two types of atlas which you all must have at your reading table. One is historic atlas There are a lot of publishers. One publisher I know is Pratiyogita Darpan from Agra. One is Upkar also from Agra. Or any good publisher you can purchase it. Now, right, second, which became independent from the Mughals were the Marathas. Now, when I say Marathas, it's not one. It's a group of people in Maharashtra and central India who had formed an association called Confederation, in which there was one center, it is like this, and there were many satellites, right? So the center was Pune, and the head of the Pune was a Peshwa. Peshwa is a post first created by Shivaji, and this post was heading two departments, finance and prime ministership of Shivaji. But over a period of time, the post of Peshwa became so powerful that the king became puppets. It is like king was Manmohan Singh and Peshwa was Sonia Gandhi. I hope you understood in 2004 to 14. So who was the first Peshwa who had made this post very powerful? That's the name you have to write. Balaji Vishwanath. His headquarters, I already told you, was Pune. Now, he was the Peshwa of Shahu. Shahu was king. Clear? And his headquarters was Satara. This is also in Maharashtra. But Shahu, as I told, was a puppet, and the real power was in the hands of Balaji Vishwanath, who was Peshwa of Shahu, and all the decision was taken from Pune rather than Satara. Both are in Maharashtra. So when Balaji Vishwanath was about to die in 1720, he was between this period. Before his death, he appointed his son as next Peshwa, known as Baji Rao I, because there are one more Baji Rao. So it is this Baji Rao which you met with Mastani. So Mastani is real or fictitious? I don't know. Baji Rao is real. I hope you're getting, because the movie makers mix up history with mystery. So Baji Rao I was the next Peshwa between 1720 to 40. Then his son Balaji Bajirao, 1740 to 61. You have to know the name of three great Peshwas in the history of Marathas. Which three? Balaji Vishwanath, his son Bajirao I, his son Balaji Bajirao. I have given the period 1713 to 20, 20 to 40, 40 to 61. And some more details I will tell you once we discuss the Mughal history and the Anglo-Maratha war at that time. And he was defeated in third battle of Panipat by Ahmad Shah Abdali. So the Maratha kingdom was a great kingdom when these Peshwa were alive. But other than Peshwa, as I told you, there were some other satellites. So one was Balaji Vishwanath with Pune. One was Sindhias. And Sindhias were based at Gwalior. Now, Scindia has recently joined BJP. Which Scindia? You know that very well, right? One Scindia was already in BJP, that is his auntie. Then you write, next was Holkar. Holkars were at Indore. Next you write, Gaikwad. Gaikwad were at Baroda. Baroda is in Gujarat, which is called Vadodara today. And then you write Bhosle. Bhosle, Nagpur. So they all are Marathas, 5 great centers. It is like, as I told, this is Maratha kingdom. This is the Peshwa. and this is Gwalior, this is Holkar, this is Indore, Holkar Indore, then Bhosle and Baroda likewise. So Peshwa was the most powerful. They all were supposed to report to Peshwa whenever there would be a war, whenever there would be loot of wealth. But they also fought among themselves and also fought against Peshwa. That was a problem with Indian rulers throughout 18th century, that they were fighting against each other regularly, which helped East India Company. So when I said Marathas, now it is very clear there was a king. King was a puppet sitting at Satara. The real power was with the Peshwa, and the three Peshwa I gave you in correct order. Now, right, next important princely state which became independent. Awadh. Now, modern day UP's central part and eastern part, like places like Lucknow, Faizabad, Kanpur, Banaras, this was all called Awadh. Do not forget the name of each state which changed many times in modern history. For instance, UP, what is today we call Uttar Pradesh, in the British time it was called United Province. And it was not entire UP. Within that, there were a lot of independent princely kingdoms, whether it is Rampur or Aligarh, etc. Then before UP, it was called North West Province also during the early British period. And it was also called Awadh. So these are different names of major part of UP. And the Nawab who became independent was Saadat Hasan Khan. And he had a title Burhanul Mulk. So sometime in prelims, they do ask the particular title, who had this. Generally, these titles would be given to them by the Mughal king. Because don't forget that Murshid Quli Khan or Saadat Khan were appointed by Mughal as their governors. They had a title Nawab Burhanul Mulk. माँ बाप ने नाम सआदत हसन खान दिया, इन्होंने अपने आगे मुगलों से एक टाइटल ले लिया, फिर इनके चाहने वालों ने दो और नाम ले लिया, तो वो नाम बढ़ जाता था. फिर ये जब चलते थे तो इनके नाम इस तरह से पुकारे जाते थे, नवाब बहादुर सआदत हसन खान आली जाह बुरहानुल मुल्क तशरीफ ला रहे हैं. अगर वो हिंदू राजा है, सूर्यवंशी सूर्य प्रतापी राजा वीर महेंद्र प्रताप सिंह पधार रहे हैं. अगर वो गरीब आदमी है, हरिया आ रहा है, हल्कू जा रहा है. Have you noticed? रामू कहाँ हो? So this name in India is a reflection of your social status. तो उस रामू का नाम रामू नहीं था, उसका नाम राम प्रसाद था. उस हरिया का नाम हरिया नहीं था, उसका नाम हरि प्रसाद था. लेकिन चूंकि गरीब आदमी था तो लोगों ने उसको और शॉर्ट कर दिया. और ये आदमी का नाम इतना बड़ा नहीं था, लेकिन अमीर आदमी है तो उसका नाम और बड़ा होता गया. शहर में नाम थे, नामों के आगे ओहदे थे. ओहदे मतलब पोस्ट. शहर में नाम थे, नामों के आगे ओहदे थे. बहुत तलाश किया, कोई आदमी ना मिला. आई होप यू आर गेटिंग दिस सिंपल उर्दू कि यहाँ पे शहर में लोगों के टाइटल्स नाम बड़े बड़े लिखे जाते हैं. इसलिए जब इंडिया आजाद हुआ तो एक आर्टिकल आया, Article 18. Have you read this? What is the purpose of this article? To abolish all the titles so that we all are equal under Article 14. So this is how you have to understand why these titles are no longer relevant. Anyways, next you write Hyderabad. The founder Chin Khalid Khan he also had a big title, very famous, Nizamul Mulk, and he was also called Asaf Jah. Nizamul Mulk, And he also had the title Asaf Jah, Chin Khalij Khan. When we say Hyderabad today, it's not only a city of Charminar, but modern day entire Telangana, certain part of Andhra, parts of Karnataka, parts of Maharashtra were all part of Hyderabad. So this is how you have to keep in your mind. The map I told you, historical atlas, can give you a better picture what I mean by Hyderabad in those days. Okay. So I gave you 4 major states which became independent from the Mughals, the name of the province, the name of the founders, and their headquarters or capital, right? Then you write Mysore. Hyder Ali. He made Sri Rangapattinam as his headquarters, which is situated on the bank of river Kaveri, and which was his military garrison. Garrison means a place where soldiers and weapons were kept. So it was like a kind of military headquarter. In medieval time, garrison became very important. Today, when we say Mysore, it's a small city, 150 kilometers away from Bengaluru. But in those days, Mysore was very big. What is today most part of Karnataka and certain part of Tamil Nadu was what called in those days as Mysore. And once again, Hyder Ali was not a king. So the king of Mysore was Chikka Krishna Raja of Wadiyar dynasty. Do you know that this dynasty is still alive? And the latest prince married 2 years back. He is 28, 29 year old. So many dynasty like Scindia, like Gaikwad, like Holkar, like Wadiyar, this 400-500-year-old dynasty, but they have no empire, no kingdom. They just think that they are king because on the eve of Dashera, वो king के dress में हाथी पे सवार होके निकलता है to show that he is still king. लेकिन बाहर वो एसएचओ पकड़ लेता है कि लाइसेंस दिखाओ, आधार कार्ड दिखाओ, तब उसको याद होता है he is no more a king. He is an ordinary citizen like me and you. So that's a very interesting thing I watched about some of the king. Now this king was living where? He was living in Mysore Palace. Mysore Palace is still one of the most beautiful palace I have seen in India. And आप उसको गूगल करके कभी देखना, शाम में उसकी लाइटिंग बड़ी मशहूर है. लगभग 1 लाख बल्ब पूरे पैलेस में 1 घंटे के लिए जलाया जाता है. एंड ऑल द टूरिस्ट के लिए वो एक बड़ा अट्रैक्शन है इवन टुडे. एंड द दशहरा ऑफ मैसूर इज द मोस्ट फेमस दशहरा इन इंडिया. कहा जाता है इससे खूबसूरत दशहरा किसी और शहर का नहीं होता. जैसे कहा जाता है ना, होली मथुरा का सबसे फेमस है, मुहर्रम लखनऊ का सबसे फेमस है, आरती बनारस का सबसे फेमस है. तो नो योर इंडिया वेल, नो द कल्चर ऑफ इंडिया वेरी वेल. इस पे प्रीलिम्स में सवाल आएगा, मेन में आएगा, इंटरव्यू में आएगा. एंड थ्रू माई हिस्ट्री ऑल्सो आई वुड help you slowly. So I hope you understood about Chikka Krishna Raja was a puppet king. The real power came in the hand of Hyder Ali. Was an ordinary soldier in the Mysore army. But when he saw his king was busy somewhere else, और उस वक्त बहुत सारे किंग लाइक पोस्ट औरंगजेब, मुगल किंग, दीज राजाज एंड नवाब, ये 10 बीवियां इनकी किले के अंदर होती थी, 20-30 किले के बाहर होती थी, शाम होती थी, जाम होती थी, उम्र यूं ही तमाम होती थी. In that scenario, some smart people, some active people would take all the power, and that's how many such people grab the power. I hope you understood, like Hyder Ali. And then his son Tipu Sultan became very famous, which you would learn in my class once we discuss English and Mysore clash, right? Then you write Punjab. Once again, when I say Punjab today, do not think only Captain Amrinder Singh and Amritsar and Jalandhar. Pakistan Punjab is bigger Punjab than India's Punjab. Lahore is the capital. And Punjab is a word derived from Persian word Panj and Aab. Panj means five, Aab means water. Modern day Pakistan Punjab, India Haryana, and India Himachal. This was all part of one Punjab, capital Lahore. And the man who made a very powerful kingdom was Maharaja Ranjit Singh, capital Lahore. So 6 kingdoms I have mentioned. Your job is to locate in the map where it was situated, the area of that state, the founder of these kingdoms, and their headquarters. Now, each of them almost other than Hyderabad had fought with English. So it is called Anglo-Bengal, Anglo-Mysore, Anglo-Punjab, Anglo-Maratha, Anglo-Awadh wars. That we will discuss, of course, in my class once we start from next week. And a lot of questions in the main, lot of questions in the prelims they would ask, they have already asked, which of course we will discuss. So I hope you understood about the story of 18th century, a glimpse that India from a very strong India slipped into mini India and many regional kingdoms. This is not the only one. I only gave you the major one. There are many smaller kingdoms which started emerging in the same 18th century, and some you would learn more as we progress. So I hope you have now better understanding about 2 topics which I just introduced you. This is like an introduction of modern history. One was the arrival of Europeans and their struggle among themselves. And second was the emergence of Indian states within the Mughals empire. So suppose this is the Mughal empire and this is earlier the entire empire under the Mughals. But finally it was now confined Mughal empire to only Delhi, and within Delhi only Red Fort, and the Mughals lost control even over Chandni Chowk, Jama Masjid, Daryaganj, Connaught Place. All area went under English since 1803 till 1853-57. The last 3 Mughal kings, Shah Alam II, Akbar II, Bahadur Shah Zafar II, they all lived on pension given by English East India Company. Now imagine, इससे ज्यादा बदकिस्मती किसी राजा के लिए क्या हो सकती कि एक जिंदा राजा किसी दूसरे के रहमो करम पे रह रहा हो और उसकी पूरी हुकूमत हिंदुस्तान से छिनकर दिल्ली से भी छिन गई, एंड ओनली रेड फोर्ट में he was only king for the sake of king. ताज है, कुछ सिपाही हैं, कुछ गार्ड है, and they had no job except to play chess. Some mushara, Mirza Ghalib would come and say some poetry, Zauq would come say some poetry. So some of the great poets were contemporary of Bahadur Shah Zafar, that also we will discuss. But what was happening in the entire part of India and the coastal India, that we will definitely discuss once we start our regular classes from Monday. And as I told yesterday, that I'm going to take modern Indian history in full swing from Monday till at least 5th of August, and we will complete a good part of modern history. During that period, I will tell you the sources which you have to refer, other than 2 sources. One is class notes and one is our study material. These are very comprehensive and would cover, I would say, almost 80% of your entire NEET syllabus, question, etc. For 20% and for elevating the standard, you have to read some good historians and good authors of each subject. If you wish to be in top 300 to get IAS, IPS, IRS, IFS, क्योंकि सारे टॉप जॉब फर्स्ट 300 के रैंक में होते हैं जनरल कैंडिडेट के लिए. ओबीसी हो तो 450 रैंक पे आईएएस मिल जाता है. डिपेंड्स अपॉन सीट ऑल्सो. अगर 1000 टोटल सीट है, SC हो तो 500 600 तक भी आपको IS मिल सकता है, ST हो तो और भी नीचे तक मिल सकता है. So depends upon your category. आप चेक कर लेना पिछले 5 सालों में कि किस रैंक पे IS IPS मिला है. So you should aim कि I have to get that rank. वो रैंक लाने के लिए कितना मार्क्स लाना है, उस मार्क्स लाने के लिए हर पेपर में मिनिमम कितना होना चाहिए, ये पूरा स्ट्रेटजी है. And your time has to be devoted accordingly, because suppose you are studying 10 hours a day or maximum 12 hours a day in the next say 18 months with some holidays here and there, then you should devote how much to be given to GS, how much to be given to optionals, how much to be given for essay. Within GS, how much to paper 1, 2, 3, 4. Within paper 1, how much to the textbook, how much to the newspapers, etc. ये पूरा एक अपने आप में आजकल डेटा का साइंस हो गया. Data itself is very important now. So you should have this understanding on your tips. Not easy right now. Each of us would help you. Like I would help history and essay and some other current affairs, how to prepare notes, like how to read newspaper. We will have some lecture on that so that you can reduce your time and get maximum juice from that newspapers, right? So in my classes, we will discuss these sources. Then after this, I will tell you how to make notes. This is very important, and how to make it very scientifically organized notes, effective notes, so that you can use it again and again, and very crucial in the last 2 months before the exam. A big challenge is how to remember, because this is one of the biggest tasks for most of the students, that they study a lot but they forget. Why they forget? Because there is something wrong in the method of their studies, not in their efforts, and not there is something wrong in their mind. Each of us got the same kind of brain, same kind of neuro cells, etc. But it's all about certain tips. And if we can help you, and you just have to follow, just like a good doctor would tell, these are the medicine, these are the exercises, these are the food, these are the timing. If you follow them, you would be a healthy person. Exactly, some of the experts would tell you about each subject, how to read and how not to forget, how to appear in some of the test series which we would organize here, and you can do on your own, because you have to do it after 6 months, regular test series of objective and subjective type. These are actually the things, but first thing and the most important thing for cracking this exam is this one. How much you are focused. If you're not, no matter whatever you do, you would struggle. But if you're focused, in Sanskrit, there is a word ekagra chit, parts of yoga's concept, that like you have heard in Mahabharata, what Arjun saw, only the left eye. What others saw, entire tree and many birds and the birds. Exactly the next 2 years, you just have to see 1 point program, civil services, nothing else. If that focus is with you, then I would suggest come and prepare. If you're thinking to do this course and that course, bank PO and that other exam, you would struggle. The only exam which I can suggest other than UPSC exam is some state public service commission. Reason is syllabus almost same and the timing does not clash. So almost 90% students who write IAS, they do also write PSC exam. Like many of my students are right now giving interview of UPPSC starting from 15th, that is tomorrow. And Rajasthan has just declared result 4 days back. Many of my students have already qualified in different states, and they were all those who have written civil service. Some in qualified up to interview, could not go to UPSC but join SDM, DSP and RTO, etc. Some of them got selected in state. They did not join, waited for UPSC, qualified UPSC and left that SDM and DSP post. ये भी हुआ है और ये सब होगा, क्योंकि एक बार सिलेक्शन हो जाता है किसी भी जॉब में, कॉन्फिडेंस आता है. It is a very natural human tendency that victory brings confidence, defeat shatters the confidence. There is no doubt in that. आदमी कितना भी बोले कि गिरने के बाद उठना चाहिए, वो सब ठीक है, अच्छी बात है, सुनने में अच्छा लगता है, लेकिन जहां आदमी 3 बार गिरता है फिर चौथी बार में उसका हिम्मत टूटने लगता है. तो इसलिए बहुत इंपॉर्टेंट है कि आप ये वाला एग्जाम लिखो. इसका अगर प्रीलिम्स भी पास किया, कॉन्फिडेंस आएगा, यस आई हैव कैलिबर, yes my hard ways had paid, and more importantly, yes my method of preparation is right, it is in right direction, तभी तो मैं prelims इतने लाखों में मैं आया हूं या आई हूं. So that I would suggest कि 2 exams but not too much exams, not too much things. Then every other thing, like the planning of the studies, like the strategies of the studies, like the choice of the material, like time management, ये सब हम लोग आपको बताएंगे. और लगभग हर टीचर मोर और लेस वही बात बताएगा, क्योंकि सबने एक दूसरे के सुन रखा है, सबने एक दूसरे के बात को कुछ एक्सेप्ट कुछ रिजेक्ट किया हुआ है, तो 90% सबकी बात एक जैसी होगी. आप भी 6 महीने में कुछ अपना बताओगे, जूनियर्स को बताओगे. ये इतना इंपॉर्टेंट नहीं है जितना ये नहीं है, तो ये सब बेकार है. तो आई वुड सजेस्ट स्टिल कि आप अभी भी अपने घर में बात कर लो कि 2 साल के लिए आर दे रेडी टू फॉरगेट यू, एक्सेप्ट सलाम दुआ एंड खैरियत के अलावा बाकी कोई रिश्तेदारी नहीं, दोस्त नहीं, व्हाट्सएप नहीं, बॉयफ्रेंड नहीं, गर्लफ्रेंड नहीं, ये सबको अभी आप कोल्ड स्टोरेज में रख. एक बार सिविल सर्विस हो गया फिर बॉयफ्रेंड और गर्लफ्रेंड की लाइन लग जाएगी. अभी मेरे जितने सिलेक्टेड स्टूडेंट्स हैं उनके रिश्ते के लिए मेरे पास फोन आता है, तो मैं परेशान हो जाता हूँ. मैं कहता हूँ मैं मैट्रिमोनियल कॉलम में थोड़ी काम करता हूँ कि सबके रिश्ते के लिए बात करूं, बट आई फील हैप्पी कि इसके लिए रिश्ता इतने अच्छे घर से, इतने अमीर घर से, इतने पढ़े लिखे घर से आ रहा है, बिकॉज ही इज नाउ एसडीएम, ही इज डीएसपी. कल तक उसको कोई पूछता नहीं था, वो बेचारा उधार लेके काम चलाता था राजेंद्र नगर में, मुखर्जी नगर में, और आज उसके पास एक आदमी मर्सिडीज से आ रहा है मेरे पास और मेरी खुशामद कर रहा है. अभी दोपहर में एक सीनियर औरत ने मुझे फोन किया, उस लड़के से बात करा दो. सो आई जस्ट एक्सक्यूज देम, बट ऑल आई एम टेलिंग यू कि तुम्हारे भी ऐसे दिन आएंगे, जैसे पोर्चुगीज के आए थे ना, अंग्रेजों के आए थे, अमेरिकन के आए, आजकल चाइनीज के आए हुए, वैसे तुम्हारे भी आएंगे. जस्ट ब्रिंग focus. So see you now on Monday, and my colleague would join tomorrow. Dharmender, at what time Zulfikar sir would coming tomorrow? 4 o'clock or 3:30? So tomorrow you would get class on economy at 4 p.m. by my colleague Zulfikar Sahab, and we are the team who are also teaching in Jamia Millia Islamia, where we have a residential coaching academy, and our students are getting selected, and in Bombay Hajj House and many other places in Rajendra Nagar and Mukherjee Nagar. So our team would ensure that you are in safe hand and you are getting the right material in limited time. And I also told them personally to make sure that the fee should be minimum, just for so that anybody can afford it, as we know that most of India comes from middle and poor middle and lower middle class. So the idea is to reach out to as many students as possible who are serious and who are focused. So thank you very much, and we'll see you again from Monday. Thank you.